Hello and welcome to Mindset Mentoring for Athletes, Families, and Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Coach Chuck. And today we're stepping into a conversation that every parent, every leader, and every young person needs to hear. Artificial intelligence is rewriting our world, but the real question is, what is it doing to us, to our kids, to our identity, to our ability to think, choose, and lead? Stay tuned for that conversation.
It doesn't yell, it doesn't bleed, but it's killing us slowly, quietly. Stress, the invisible enemy behind sleepless nights, fractured relationships, fading focus, and dreams left in the dust. It's not just adults. It's our kids, our players, our students. We think it's the stress itself that's the enemy. But the real danger, how we've been conditioned to react to it. What if our normal reaction to stress doesn't have to be normal? What if the most powerful weapon against stress is already inside you?
Welcome back. And my guest today is someone at the intersection of innovation, leadership, and humanity. Jain is a CEO, global business mind, and one of the brightest voices in the world of AI. He's also the father of a 1-year-old, which adds a layer of urgency and clarity to the way he views the future. He understands AI is not just a set of tools, but a force reshaping identity, opportunity, creativity, and the future our children will inherit. Today we're talking the good, the bad, the dangerous, and the profoundly hopeful. This is a conversation about what it means to be human in a world guided by AI. Welcome to the show, Jain. Welcome, Nick.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Chuck, and appreciate the very kind introduction as well.
Well, it's an honor to have you, and you are seem to be quite a young guy, but you already have had quite a lot of professional experience and all. Why don't you fill in our listeners just like who you are, where you've gotten your background, what CEO and all this other stuff. Just give us kind of a brief overview, and then we can kind of take it from there.
Sure, I'm older than I look. The camera's not showing off my gray hairs for whatever reason. But um, so my quick background, I spent 10 years on Wall Street working at some of the premier private equity and hedge funds, so investing in large multi-billion dollar companies. And then for the last 5 or 6 years, I have been a scale-up CEO, which means that when a company hits a certain level of complexity and growth, it needs professional managers. And that's when they bring me in to take a company from stage X in its growth to stage 10X in its growth. In that role, I've led 3 different companies. A $10 million revenue software company, a $100 million revenue trucking company, and a $2 million shoe company in a variety of C-level roles, most recently as CEO of this software company. Along the way, I earned a degree in theoretical math and physics from Dartmouth and an MBA from Harvard Business School.
Wow, quite an educational background. Now, I'm curious about the drive and all. I've interviewed other CEOs and people. What was it about the early year mindset development that kind of did you always know business was going to be it? And Dartmouth, Harvard, those Ivy League schools, right? So what can you kind of talk about where that mindset that you obviously developed at a fairly young age that drove you into that high achieving field because that Ivy League, that's what that is, and then obviously your professional career, uh, high achieving, high goal setting kind of situations. Can you talk about that briefly?
Yeah. So look, I'm from an immigrant background. It's probably not dissimilar from a lot of folks that I inherited that immigrant hustle from a young child, from a young age, right? Both my parents worked their butts off. They, showed up with the shirts on their backs. And they passed along kind of two things. Number one, You just got to work your butt off in almost every aspect of life, whether that be in your job, whether that be in your family life, whether that be in contributing to your community. That's number one. And number two, they impressed on me the value of education as what I would call a moral good. So you don't just go to school to get a degree and get a good job, but you get it because being educated and learning, it should be fun and it should be a meaningful way as part of your life. And if you grow up with those two mentalities, work your butt off, value education, a lot of good things happen. You asked me if I knew I wanted to go into the world of business when I was a young age. Absolutely not, right? I just knew I wanted to do well in school and probably wanted to pursue a degree in the hard sciences and maybe go get a PhD and become a professor somewhere. If you asked me at age 5, at age 13, probably at even age like 18, what I wanted to do, I would have said, hey, I'm going to get a PhD and become a scientist somewhere. Along the way, I discovered that, what is business? What is Wall Street? What is, growing companies? And realized that I could draw some of that same quantitative aptitude and passion that I have for numbers and apply it in a much more practical, impactful setting in the world of business, which is how I've ended up here over the last decade or so.
Well, so you mentioned numbers and your fascination with science, and some of your CEO jobs were in, high tech businesses. So that kind of is a natural segue right into what we are all beginning to really face. It's coming down really fast, and that world of AI, and what it's doing. Like my last year in education was my first introduction to ChatGPT, right? It was just kind of coming out and getting going. And, there's some concerns with that and what it might do for kids, academically speaking, and its ability to like maybe write papers for kids and things like that. Well, I've been over the last month really kind of going down this rabbit hole, and there is, boy, a whole lot about AI that can be very exciting, but yet I think with every new technology, it's also there should be some big kind of warning flags. And as a mindset guy, I want to kind of help people prepare their own mindset for the changes I think that are coming, but I don't think people understand what those changes are. So, can you kind of speak to what you are seeing from your end about what we might want to expect and what that might mean for people who are listening?
Sure. So I do want to make a quick technical distinction. Everyone use the word AI because it's buzzy. It's in the movies. We've seen it in 30 or 40 years in science fiction movies. So we don't actually have artificial intelligence today. That is, it could be 1 year away, could be 10 years away. What we have is very, very smart chatbots that can do chain of sequence thinking. They can say, if a ball drops, it will hit the ground, right? They can sequentially logic the way a human being can, but they are not intelligent. What they are is extraordinarily powerful tools, but a human being still has to guide them and drop the ball so they can figure out that the ball bounces, that bounces up, bounces down. They can do this extraordinary sequence of events. What that means is, at least today, AI is still a tool, and a tool is ultimately limited by how good the user is of that tool. And I'll use an example from the old school world, and then I'll show how that applies to AI. So let's imagine you're painting with a paintbrush. I'm really bad at art. You can give me the same paintbrush as a professional artist, the exact same set of paints, and what I will draw will look terrible, and what he or she will draw will look extraordinary. And that is despite being given the same tools. And that same gap exists when people are using AI tools today, whether they be image generators, whether they be chatbots, whether they be agentic AI. You see a huge distinction in the quality, truly enormous, between somebody who knows how to use these AI tools effectively and somebody who doesn't. And that is true not just universally across AI, but somebody could be great at agentic AI and be really bad at artistic AI or at mathematical AI. And that's a really important distinction that, at least today, where we don't have true intelligence in AI, that we have to think of it as a tool and realize that it is a skill set that needs to be mastered to use these tools effectively, both generally and for specific tools.
Thank you for that because I've been using AI quite a bit. content creator, helping me with doing video scripts and even now some logo designs and artistic work. And it's funny you say, because I'm learning how to get better at it, but particularly artistic work, right? So I've been creating a book of parables and storytelling for kids. And of course, because it's a kid's book, I can come up with stories and I'm creative that way, but I can't draw. I got no artistic talent at all. And, it's a kid's book, so there should be drawings. Well, all right, AI can do that now, right? Well, I'm learning maybe, but maybe
It
not.
might be harder than it looks, right?
Yeah. I mean, like some of the directions I give it is like, oh, all right, well, that's not bad, but, I don't want the audience or the person viewing the picture to see the painting that the artist is painting in the picture. And trying to what I think is a very subtle, oh, just turn them a little bit, right? Oh my goodness. So the language that we have to learn to use is it's a little different, right? It's kind of um, yeah, it is like learning to communicate a little bit differently than what I'm used to communicating. So that I kind of get right now. I'm kind of seeing, all right, so yeah, people aren't learning to use AI. When I say people, I mean like the average person, the way it would need to. So they might not benefit immediately, but there's a lot of you hear more and more about all the doomsayers, right? Everybody's gonna be losing their jobs and all of this. I can see why they might say that, but what you're saying is that we aren't there yet because we don't really have intelligence. Is that an accurate?
I want to make a distinction. So
Yeah.
I'm actually probably closer to the doomsayer side, saying that the AI tools that exist today can already take away a lot of jobs, unfortunately. So I am a doomsayer in that respect, and that will only get worse. But I want to make the distinction that the just because something can take away a lot of jobs does not itself make it intelligent, right? In the same way that
Mm, mm.
uh, a machine, a what is it? A any machine in a factory takes away a lot of jobs potentially, but that doesn't make it intelligent. And AI, as it exists today, is just an incredible tool that can be a multiplier for labor. The problem is that top 1 or 10% of users of that AI are able to do the job of 5 or 10 people who unfortunately may not have jobs. Or at least we haven't figured out how to replace those jobs with other meaningful things that these folks can pursue if they are displaced. And that's a much broader philosophical and socioeconomic problem that I'm certainly not going to try and offer a solution to.
Yeah, no. So I was just listening to a YouTube interview with Tristan Harris, talking about some of the what's happening with the acceleration of it all. And again, like you've said, my son's working with me, so some of the stuff we are now doing, utilizing AI for content creation, just a year and a half ago, I would have been paying somebody for it. Like when I wrote my book, Confidence for Teens: A New Chapter for the Family, some of the work that I had done, cover design and things like that, I hired somebody to do it. I a lot of that, not all of it, but a lot of that I would now do through AI. So I could definitely see how there's going to be some of those, um, some job losses that way.
Well, we're not just going to be. I'll provide a tactical example. So, blog writing used to be a pretty big thing that people did, writing articles, whether it be for blogs, whether it be for newspapers, magazines. And if you're familiar with some of the gig websites like Upwork or Fiverr, this was a huge community of people who would charge like $500 for writing a really well-crafted article. And that business has been around for a decade plus, and it's just gone. right? All of those people, there's no reason for you to pay, unfortunately, $500 or $1,000 for a professional writer on Fiverr or Upwork or some of these platforms because AI can do that extraordinarily well. Now, there's a can I jump in with one side thing? So I think
Yeah, please do.
the way I think you've been talking about AI is you asking AI to do things for you, and it can do things that you were not capable of doing or didn't have time to do before, right? Like creating a image or writing an article. In terms of AI adoption, that's called level one, that you're using AI to be a force multiplier for yourself, to give you more hours in the day, or to do basically add skill sets or unlock skill sets for yourself. There's two other levels of AI adoption, which is really where the power users are heading. The second level is right now you were talking about, hey, AI made an image for you and you told it to change it, where you're still providing AI feedback. Level two is the AI self corrects. So you teach the AI to edit itself, to edit its own output and iterate on it. So you take yourself out as the limiter. And once you do that, you can move to level three. Whereas if you don't need to be the bottleneck, you can have 100 AIs doing different things, right? Because you don't have to constantly tell AI one, do, change this, AI two, change that. And that is where the real power of AI starts being unlocked and kind of potentially in a very scary way, where one person can make 100 copies of themselves or 1,000 copies to do extraordinary things where they don't even have to do anything anymore. And that's really where this technology is already there, and a small proportion of people are adopting it for that level of multiplicity or parallel processing.
I, yeah, that's fascinating. It was just, I think now, it was only 2.5 weeks ago, and I'm just kind of beginning to. I knew I didn't know how to use like ChatGPT, and I've got the paid version, but I knew I wasn't really good at fully maximizing its potential to help me do things that, time saving things. So, one of the first things I learned was that I could make a clone of myself. And so I went in and did that and tested with a few couple prompts I learned, got feedback on myself from this expert, AI that I helped create, and I was like, wow, like I, it was exciting, but also in some ways kind of like scary. Like I'm not sure when you start talking about these level two and three and the self-correcting and all, what again, as a mindset coach and trying to help people understand how to deal with the storms of life and the stresses of life and the pressures of life and how to change too when change happens. It seems like the change is coming so fast that it's going to blindside a lot of people. And I'm a little concerned even about, well, you have a 1 year old, so some of the changes that will come that I don't know that we are ready for, and what that might look like and what we can do about it. Can that
We're
that's a
certainly
lot
not
there.
ready
So
for it. This is an active discussion that my wife and I are having, that what does educate, like, setting aside jobs, which is an entirely, separate issue, like what is the purpose of life, or what is the purpose of education for my child's life? As you mentioned, I've got all these fancy degrees. My wife is in the same boat. We've spent a lot of time in school learning these skill sets that were valuable, right? It was valuable to know how to do multiplication and calculus and to have read famous books so you could be a great writer. Is that is I don't think that's going to be necessary for my 1 year old, by the time he's 10, much less by the time he's 25. So we're very, very concerned, to be quite frank, about, how do we think about that child's education? How do we think about his or her career? Because these things are coming extraordinarily fast. And I'll give a personal example. I'm somewhere probably between, I'm like level 1.8. I haven't quite hit level two. But I've also borrowed some stuff from level three. On the computer sitting behind me, I have 5 different agents doing 2 different activities. 4 of them are basically writing grant proposals on totally unrelated subjects, and one is running a social media account behaving as my clone. And each of those agents is costing me like 30 cents a month, which is kind of crazy. They're working 18 hours a day and they are, costing me 30 cents a month. And they're doing things that are multiplying. And once I kind of get to full, really to level two, there's nothing that prevents me from taking these five agents and making them 5,000. It'll cost me another, what is it, 5,000, $500 a month to have a workforce of 1,000. And that is, I'm not there yet from a technical skill set, but I'm trying to get there because I'm horrified that if I don't get there, someone else will.
That's actually that interview I was
And
just.
I'm talking the day for me, right? Imagine what that means for my child, as you said, like 10 or 20 years from now, whether I got there or someone else got there, the world will have a bunch of these people who have armies of agents doing work. From like one guy in a desktop computer somewhere, we'll have an army of 1,000 people working for him or a million.
Yeah, no, right. That was actually one of the things that I just in that interview I was telling you about was that he was talking about the number. It's going to be like a mass wave of low wage workers. You just said it was like 30 cents a month or whatever it was you were essentially paying these workers for you to do work that they are really good at, efficient at, and that sort of change is going to it's going to accelerate. The more AI develops, the more it learns, and the more it it grows. I don't know if I'm saying that right when I say it grows, but it's the potentiality of it grows. The more um, we're going to see those changes in the workforce. But I also, because that seems to be what a lot of people talk about, but you just kind of said too, when you go through education, and I've been a lifelong learner, love reading books, watching interviews, learning music, art, like all those kinds of things. And if we aren't exposing, for whatever reason, younger people to all of that, I think we lose a lot societally, culturally. And I don't know the answer, but I don't know how AI would play into that. I already know that there are, students, high school students and all are, they're just asking ChatGPT. Just go, and they aren't stopping to think about what the answer might be coming back to them. They aren't really processing that themselves. They aren't. It's it's more passive, and that concerns me. Is that, and I don't know if that's AI or just the way I'm not sure
Well, look,
I'm wording
look,
this well,
when
but yeah. So
So again, I want to. AI is a tool, right? At least today, it's not intelligent in the way that you would see in the Terminator movies. It's right, but um, AI is still an extraordinary tool. And what happens when you create an extraordinary tool? People use it because it's better than the old way of doing things. And a very, a very tangible example is if you've ever done construction and you want to put a nail into a piece of wood, you can use a rock, you can use a typical claw hammer, or you can use an air hammer. And all of those are viable ways to do it. But any professional, anybody who wants to be good at their job, is not going to use the rock. They'll use a claw hammer if they have it. And if they have the air hammer, they'll use that. And the same is true with ChatGPT, right? We've gone through this evolution where once upon a time, the way to write and transmit information was to write with a pen on paper. Then, somewhere in the 90s, as word processing systems became prevalent and most people in most schools had computers, people stopped writing essays on paper and they just said, let's, type them into a computer. That you started seeing this on even like exams like the SAT, where you just enter it into a computer rather than fill out a pen and paper form. And now we're just going to the next level. And then you got spell check, so people didn't have to learn how to spell. And you're just going through a continuous evolution. The fundamental needs for a person to think haven't changed across all those evolutions of tools. It is, are people being more effective at A, using those tools, and B, does the incremental time that they get back of their life by using these tools, is that being reinvested in something more meaningful to them? Whether that be to spend time thinking critically instead of scribbling, pen and paper, which is a very slow writing method, right? Um, And the answer could be yes or it could be no, but that's not AI's fault if people are choosing to, if they get 20 hours of their life back from doing homework and they're using that to play video games or swing through Instagram, that's not AI's fault, right? That is ultimately a human decision about where we choose to allocate our time. And I'm as guilty of this as the next guy over.
Yeah. I was I have a very good friend who's the CEO of Structure Therapeutics, a drug company. And he's been a pioneer in the development of small molecules for right now. That it's for weight loss and all. They've got few in the pipeline, but he was talking about how much he's been able to use AI to just help, like its ability to process information and do all these things that their team can, you know, pose a question to it and it will help generate other avenues, other ways of thinking, other options. And he says it's fantastic. Sometimes he'll get an idea and he'll go and he's got like AI right there, so he can pose the question, get some feedback from it, and then kind of go, oh. So in those instances, it's actually spurring even more creativity. It's not it's not that's the positive side, right? That's the thing that it can really help do well. I still try to grasp what its role might be. It's even 2 to 3 years from now, the average person, where will they see this impacting their life? Do you think most? The average Joe who's a blue
Sure. So
collar
look,
worker.
the
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll again draw an example from my personal life. I think you're overestimating how many people are actively using AI at all. So I play poker, low stakes poker, live, and you can imagine that's a pretty socioeconomically diverse group of people. People who are rich, people who are poor, kind of a very broad mix of educational statuses and economic statuses. And if you talk to 90% of people in the room, most of them haven't even opened up ChatGPT, or they may have opened it up once, asked it a cute question, and stopped using it. So there's a large proportion of the population, and I'm not just talking people older, but there's also a large part of younger people who are primarily using these AI tools to chat with, right? Or to create a cool image or a cool video and share. And that's the limitation of AI adoption for somewhere between 70 to 90% of the population, that they're using it as a chat interface to interact back and forth or to create some form of content, whether that be written video or image content. There is only a small percent of the population, and it's estimated somewhere between 5 to 20% of the population that is using AI as a multiplier. And that's where the real power comes, where you can create, be a 10x version of yourself, either number one, or to do things that you were not capable of doing fundamentally before. And that can be true at an individual level or at an organizational level. So the big thing that's going to change over the next, well, I actually don't think much is going to change over the next 1 to 3 years in terms of the how the average person is going to use AI, but rather the impact of that, call it that top 5% or that top 1% who are moving into level 2 and level 3 of AI adoption, because that it doesn't require the median person in our population to become really good with AI. It's very scary that if the 1% of people can become 1,000xers, that's where you start to see a social level impact. Unlike other technologies, you don't require broad adoption of this because this is such a force multiplier effect for that top 1% of users.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the point I was trying to grasp a little bit was if you have just a small group of people, um, the high tech guys who are really trying to do what you just said, that multiplier effect, while the average Joe isn't using it, what though will that small group who are doing it to multiply all the different tasks that might be to run a business or make it function, what will that impact be on?
Well, so I don't know if it. impact the average Joe in the next 3 years, but we're already seeing impacts for white collar knowledge workers. So a couple of the big elite consulting firms where all your, where the graduates of Ivy League schools go to, and just over the past week or two, they've indicated that they're not hiring junior entry level people, or they're doing pay freezes for those entry level people. So these are where the young smart graduates from the Harvards and Stanfords and Williams colleges, all these great colleges go to, all of a sudden those entry level jobs that are the beginning escalator, they don't need anymore because AI can do that job much, much better, because the partners of those firms, especially the smart partners, have started saying, hey, instead of hiring a junior analyst and paying them a lot of money, AI can do that. So it's already impacting, let's say, the top tier of knowledge workers quite quickly and very, very dramatically. It's probably going to impact the average Joe, the salesperson, the marketing person a lot less than I think we're afraid of. But it's already eating away at that kind of that top quartile or top decile of knowledge workers quite intensely and quite quickly.
So with so in that realm, those educated people in those kind of entry level positions, those knowledge ones, what do you see them doing now then? Where are they smart people, right? So very creative thinkers and all. If they're having a hard time getting into, the corporate world and then getting that training that presumably they get to kind of move up the ranks, do you like what are they doing? Do you hear like where they're putting their talents to use?
Sure. So I'm not going to try and offer a solution for this, because I think this is a really complex problem that is perhaps has a really bad ending. As I said, I'm a little bit more doomsday-ish on this than the average person. But here's what we can see in the data as it's today, without me kicking a guesswork of what's going to happen 5 or 10 years from now. So number one, a lot of entry-level jobs are just disappearing, and a lot of young people are looking for jobs. So empirically, knowledge entry level knowledge labor has a higher unemployment rate than would be predicted by the general strength of the overall economy, which is doing kind of okay to good. Um, Number two is, though, if those people still need to feed themselves, right, they will need to find other jobs, and those might perhaps be jobs that they are like overeducated for. So you're seeing a growth in people taking in taking more blue collar or manual labor jobs. So there was an article, I forget whether it was the Wall Street Journal or New York Times, just 2 weeks ago, about two sisters, one of whom had gone to college to become a writer, and one of whom was a car mechanic. And the car mechanic's doing well. She's got a stable job. She's making $70,000, $80,000 a year. And her sister, who went to college, to a good college and got a good English degree, is struggling to make ends meet. And you're probably going to see that shift towards people going to, whether or not they got that college degree in the first place, you're going to see an economic or labor market shift towards jobs that people need to. Towards jobs that are not being attacked by AI today, simply because people do need jobs. They do need to pay for themselves, their family, their food, etc.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I don't know where it might have been that interview, but somebody had mentioned this is recently. Again, I've kind of started going down this rabbit hole a little bit, but they said like with law firms, some of the law clerk type roles, jobs, things that they did, or the real they weren't the lawyers, but they're the ones supporting the lawyers. Those jobs are kind of disappearing because AI, I guess, can do the research, um, much
Well,
quicker,
both the
cheaper.
lawyers. So you're right, but it's both the lawyers and the legal secretaries, right? Or the legal assistants. There's a variety of the paralegals. But both the lawyers, the folks just out of their law school degrees, as well as the white collar support staff, those jobs have been disappearing for a while. As you know, a silly example is, one of the jobs that a lot of lawyers do is what's called discovery. They look when you're suing somebody, they have to read all the documents you have. You have to read all the documents you have, and that's a great training ground for lawyers, because it requires a very smart person to read through thousands and thousands of page documents. But those jobs have been disappearing over time for the last 20 years, because 20 years ago, you could use find, right? You could hit Control F on your keyboard and you could look for keyword searches. And then you started getting what's called optical character recognition, where you could take documents that have been physically printed out and a computer could realize, hey, these are words and we can now search these words. And now instead of a human being needing to search for those words, AI can do what's called contextual search. It can read an entire document, understand what's going on, and say, hey, this is relevant to the lawsuit or it isn't. So those jobs have been disappearing for a long while, and AI only accelerates that trend. Now, again, hopefully, other jobs will appear, but that's at least as of right now, we're not seeing that. We're seeing AI just truly destroy a bunch of jobs.
You know, it's fascinating. I'm both excited and a little bit nervous. From my own personal standpoint, it's like as I'm getting ready to start a whole new mentorship program with families and all. Part of what I preach is our ability as humans to manage stress, emotions, our own thinking patterns, to become adaptable, which are all mindset related stuff, is probably going to be more valuable than ever because knowledge just seems to be increasing that much more rapidly and its impact. So things change quicker, right? It seems like that's been happening for a while now. They talk about how the knowledge doubles every, I don't even know, remember what the data is now, however many years it is that is now doubling. And when that happens, changes happen. And I think some of the challenges we see with young people today, with the stress, anxiety, and they read these headlines that come up about how do I prepare for the future when the future is going to be different before I even get done college, right? That kind of like and to me, if your mindset's right, you'll have a better ability to adapt and try to figure it out without getting all overwhelmed by all the emotions and stuff. So for me, I I can see a whole lot of work coming down coming down the road,
So,
but
so I agree with you, and I'll give a personal example, right? So you're absolutely right that mindset and adaptability matters. And I'll give a personal example, something that's I'm very stressed about, but trying to react with. So I have this, fancy MBA from Harvard Business School. It's great. It should set you for life. But turns out I think, and that partially given AI, partially given the broader evolution of the job market, having that fancy MBA doesn't matter anymore, even though I spent lots of years working to get it. What does that mean? I can either say, oh crap, I wasted all these years of my life, spent a bunch of money, and to get a fancy degree that doesn't matter, or I can say, that's life. Let's move on. Let's go learn new skill sets and adapt to the world that we live in. And that's it. I'm hoping that I'm more in that latter camp, but it's certainly stressful to know that a lot of the things that I've invested my life in perhaps don't matter as much anymore. And I got to continue on with life regardless.
yeah, yeah, that's the younger generation is the rather is not a complimentary term, but you hear sometimes it referred to as snowflakes, right? A little bit of pressure, they just kind of melt away, and that's I wanted to help people change some of that, but I can sort of understand it, right? When you hear about the rate of things changing and you just don't know whether you are going to be prepared for that. I can understand where some of that anxiety and the fear and all those things pop up. So um, that's why I keep kind of preaching the importance of that. I know we're coming towards the end of our time. I love having this conversation, and your expertise has been great for me personally. It helps me kind of think as well. So I know my listeners will um, appreciate as well. If somebody wants to learn more about you, about any of the work you're doing, you had said something about doing all kinds of stuff social media wise. What's the best way for somebody to kind of find you or follow you or
Sure. So the best way is my website is literally nickjane.com. You'll see some of the personal projects I'm working on. I'm, findable very easily on the internet. My email and stuff is on both LinkedIn and nickjane.com. But I'll make a quick plug for the big project that I'm working on these days, which is a software for funeral homes called Sacred Grounds. And basically, me and a buddy about 6 months ago said, look, funeral homes are basically using software from the 1990s and they're paying $10,000 a year. Can't we do it better? Make modern software that just works, that looks modern, that's easy to use, and can we do it for like $500 a year? And the answer we discovered was yes. So that's our big project. We launched it about 2 months ago now. And it's called Sacred Grounds, and it's basically a software that makes it a lot easier for funeral homes to deal with their clients and bereaved families. And that's the big thing that I'm focused on these days.
I love that project. So yeah, I'll have to check that out myself. Love the idea of that. Well, thank you, Nick. I really enjoyed the conversation and appreciate you taking the time out today.
Thank you so much, Chuck.
Yeah, that was a fascinating conversation, and we could probably really delve a whole lot more into that. AI is going to have some profound implications for all of us, whether you use it or not. So there's some food for thought. But inevitably, when there are changes like this in society, culturally, which we've been going through a whole lot of these, we need to be prepared to handle ourselves, the emotions and the stress and things that arise from that. And that really is all about our mindset. So I am really, really excited because for 30 years I have had this vision for kind of what should be incorporated into schools, really. And I was able to incorporate some of what I'm about to launch in some of the programs I did, but not to the extent. And the key aspect of my programs really was about mentoring and coaching. I would constantly tell my students, I don't really see myself as a teacher. I'm a coach. I'm here to help you and mentor you and coach you. And it went a lot beyond academics. And I am now in a position where I can finally take a dream that first began in 1992 when I was going back to school to become a teacher for a new concept with schools. And it's a mentorship, right? It's something with modern technology I can begin to offer families beyond my local community. And we are just now launching this and we're going to take applications. So you can go to the Champions Mindset Mentorship.com. There'll be a link in the description, the Champions Mindset Mentorship.com. Check that out. Really look at it. And if you feel it fits for you, apply. The application process is not like saying, I want to do this. It's saying that you are interested in doing this. And it's important to fill out this length to it because this mentorship it's something you'll not get in any high school, private school, college. You won't find this anywhere. And you will find that it's far more affordable than you think or you might think, particularly when you compare it to the cost of a college education. So once again, I'm encouraging you, and if you know another family, pass that along, right? The Champions Mindset Mentorship.com. And as always, I encourage you to go out and live your days to the fullest.